half of the gender will never understand. But thank you so much for the warm welcome. My voice is bolstering. I am so excited and honored to be here today. When Ascend reached out for this moderating opportunity, I would have never imagined that I would get an opportunity to connect with someone so inspiring. So I'll try to do the justice that this story deserves. But I think as you dine, hopefully, as Diane talked about belonging and inspiration, hopefully Anne's story will touch you in just that fashion. Oh, closer. Oh, okay.
A little closer.
How's that?
Perfect.
Fantastic. Can you hear me now? All right, well, enough about that. Let's just dive straight in. And I am so happy to have you here with us today. And what an amazing feat. Can we just give another round of applause for Nordstrom launch of Anne's product, House of N Beauty. Thank you. I believe you are the first Vietnamese women-owned brand of a beauty product launched at Nordstrom. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
That is amazing. How does it feel to be making such a statement in the industry?
It feels, for me, it's humbling. It's an incredible experience for us. And even though we are the first, we're not the last. And I was surprised that it took Vietnamese community this long to have a Viet woman-owned skincare brand to be launched at Nordstrom. But for sure, now that we are here, we're going to continue to uplift and guide the next generations to enter the beauty market.
That is fantastic. And we're going to listen to your story on exactly how you became to where you are today. But it wasn't always that easy, was it?
No, it wasn't.
So we know that you're an immigrant, and you actually came at a very young age. And I think a lot of us can probably relate to that. Many of us, if not our parents and ourselves, are immigrant, first generation. And we all can relate to how hard that is, right? Can you share a little bit about that story of when you came, how young you were, and I believe you were on your own as well, right? Tell us a little bit about that background.
Yeah, so I came to the U.S. For school at 15, and before that, my dad passed away in Vietnam. And so I had to leave my mom behind, and I flew over here on a big airplane on my own at 15. And when I came here, I actually lived with my brother for the first few years. And when my mom started getting sick, I was in junior year, and my brother had to went back to Vietnam to take care of her. So I was completely on my own. And by the time I was 18, my mom passed away, and I completely lost the financial support, the family, everything. I was stuck here alone by myself, and I had to figure out like a way to survive and to live.
Wow, so you were 15 when you immigrated here by yourself, and you were with the one family member that you had, your brother. You had lost your father at that point, and your brother had to leave to take care of your mother in Vietnam. Maybe elaborate a little bit about that, because I don't know that many of us, can even begin to comprehend what that feels like. What was that feeling like for you in that moment when you feel like things were slipping away?
I think the greatest blessing I had was that my father instilled in me at a very young age that America is the land of opportunity. He was in the U.S. Army, and unfortunately he got stuck back in Vietnam. So he spent his entire life trying to send his kids over here in any means possible. So at that point, even though things are slipping away, for me to be here, I cannot waste this opportunity, and I cannot waste literally his entire life worth of work. So I just had to be here and survive.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that very raw emotion. And I know when you and I had connected prior, it was about, you were very transparent, very open, And it was about sharing this journey that you went through, right? Because even though it's painful, it's about how you persevered and how you found strength. So even in that moment where you were holding on, where did you draw strength? So you mentioned that your father's words and the hard work ethics that he instilled in you. How did you start to find the transition from those kind of dark moments to finding some hope?
I was very young, at 18. I mean, we're all 18 once, and we have a very simple mindset, you know? At that moment, it was do or die. It was you either sink or you swim. So I decided to swim. I went and got a job at a pho restaurant, and I asked them for an advance so that I can rent a little room to stay. And I just worked like day in and day out. I didn't think much. I didn't have time to grieve, and just kept myself busy. My first priority was to keep a roof over my head, and my second was to feed myself. So I didn't have much time to think.
Right, and often that is the story of the immigrant, right? That whether it's our parents or ourselves, we are left with no choice, right? And that kind of pushes us forward to being hardworking, staying focused on the target, and that's exactly what you have done. I know that at 18 that was really hard, and then shortly after, did you meet someone special in your life?
Yeah, I met my then boyfriend, now husband, when I was 19, and I felt like my dad and my mom really led us together, because I think they're worried that I'm here alone by myself.
Yeah. And he became your support system, right? He became that rock for you?
Yes, definitely. When we met, we were two broke kids with dreams, and you know, we lean on each other and we have each other, and that's the best part.
Yeah, so finding that support system is on. We'll talk a little bit more about how maybe we can't do it all, right? And that will be very much as we see kind of the societal norm placed on women to do it all. So you found a wonderful partner, and I believe shortly after, and I want to start diving into this, which is really the inspiration of your brand ultimately, you became pregnant and you had your first baby. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I had my first baby when I was 22.
Okay, and what was that journey like? You're finally coming out from this past, you found a partner, you had your baby. Kind of tell us a little bit more about that experience with the baby.
It was rough, being the first time being a mom, have no families around. It was just myself and my husband, and taking care of this baby. Of course, you went through a whole lot of different emotions, and add on to the hormones, it was not a great mix. So I went through postpartum depression around that time.
Yeah, and I believe many of us are parents or partners, right? We have partners who may have experience giving birth and raising a kid, and the kind of the tension around that, right? So this postpartum depression, walk us a little bit through that, because it ultimately led to the discovery of a very special ingredient that is part of your product. Is that correct?
Yes, so during, I was struggling with it for a few months, and then I decided to go see my doctor. And my doctor recommended to put me on medication. And around that time, I was still breastfeeding my son, so I didn't want to take that away from him. So I asked, is there any natural alternative that I can just, help me to sleep better and ease my anxiety? It doesn't have to take away everything, but it's just something that helped. And he recommended medicinal quality saffron. And growing up in the Vietnamese culture, we don't cook with saffron. I didn't know what it was at the time. And he even told me to not use the saffron in cooking, but find the medicinal quality saffron. So it took me a while to figure that out, but when you ingest saffron, it helps with your sleep. You'll sleep better, you have a deeper sleep, your anxiety will be much better. So yeah, it really helped me.
That's amazing. So sometimes discovery is always made coincidentally, correct?
Yeah, for sure.
And so obviously this evolved into a brand. So tell us a little bit more about how you were able to mirror this secret ingredient. Like how do you combine the secret ingredient into an actual business idea? What really prompted that?
I have grew up, I watched Michelle Phan on YouTube ever since I was a little girl in Vietnam. And I have always been in love with beauty. And I have to credit everything to her because she really introduced me to the world of beauty. And I became obsessed. I follow trends. I collect makeup and skincare products. And when I discovered saffron and I noticed that it has a lot of skincare benefits, and the mainstream market didn't know what saffron was at the time. No beauty brand features saffron in the mass scale. And saffron for your skin is actually the only plant-based ingredients that can calm sensitive skin while also brighten your dark spots as well. So if your mom and you went through pregnancy, you will notice that your skin will become very sensitive, but then you also have melasma. And the products on the market for dark spots would burn your skin and would irritate your skin, and the products for sensitive skin would just heal and doesn't do anything. So saffron is that white space, and I noticed that, and that was the idea to really build a brand on top of it.
Right, so it really does sound like it was everything coming together where you discover this amazing ingredient, you had a natural passion for beauty, and you found kind of a need in the market, correct?
Yes, for sure.
And that ultimately became the differentiating factor, right? That differentiated your product from the rest, correct?
Yeah.
So then who really gave you this courage to even pursue a business? I mean, humble beginnings, young still at that time, just you and your husband, now with a baby and all the stress of that. Did you just say, I'm gonna start a business?
Yeah, so when I met my husband, he wanted to quit his 9-to-5 and pursue building classic VW buses as a career, you guys. No, I supported him, don't get me wrong. I was there, I was in the trenches with him. And we built it into a business, and he still runs that business. And we saved up enough, about $75,000 for our deposit for the down payment for our first home. And when I told him about this idea that I have, he told me just to take that and start a business out of it. And I was just like, are you crazy? We worked so hard for this. I can't. And he told me, we got here from nothing. Like, we built all this on our own. So if you lose it, we'll build it again. Simple, right? So that was the courage. So that was the push that I needed. Like that trust and that faith that he has in me. That was what I needed to really go all in with this business.
Right. And I mean, oftentimes professionally we talk about that mentorship and sponsorship, but personally, we also need to really lean on our support systems to really get us through those big decisions. So despite the tone in your voice about building classic VW cars, you were extremely supportive, and then if anything, you were the pragmatic one saying, are you crazy? This is our life savings towards our first house, right? Yeah. So that is amazing that your husband was that rock for you. So let's talk about the beginnings of your business. Obviously you have a great product, you have the support of your husband and the funding, but it was never an easy road, was it? I mean, talk about what kind of roadblocks. We mentioned quite a few when we connected. Talk about some of those roadblocks that you had to face as a young woman entrepreneur.
I would say the biggest challenge in the beginning was to find a chemist and a manufacturer that aligned with what I'm trying to do. So I'm trying to formulate a product out of saffron, and I also wanted to supply the manufacturer with the saffron ingredient that I found because I wanted to keep the quality the same. And if you're in the manufacturing industry, you would know that most cosmetics manufacturers in the US, they don't do extraction in-house. So if you wanted to make a product, you give them a marketing brief. They will go out and source the active ingredients that you want from a third-party supplier, and then they will make it for you. Now, I need somebody that can extract the raw material in-house because that is the foundation of my brand. So hearing a lot of no's in the beginning, and on top of that, my skin was extremely sensitive, and I wanted to formulate with ingredients that are truly healthy for your skin, and using preservative system that is not, that can cause cancer. You know, there's a lot of ingredients out there that could harm your health, but a lot of chemists, they have a certain way of formulating, and they don't want it to change their ways. It was a tough battle in the beginning to hear, you know, the constant no's. But I'm glad that happened early on because that gave me, you know, a lot of practice to deal with no's, and, you know, no's doesn't stop me anymore.
Well, that's impressive. And I mean, as simple as that sounds, I think many of us experience that, right? We struggle in the face of no's, or we stop ourselves even before we ask, correct? So, and I mean, above and beyond the no's, I think we also talked about how there's this stereotype against women, right? When they see these chemists who are old school,
Yes, old men.
likely not Asian, right? And they see this young Asian woman
Yes.
who's new to the industry. So there's, you know, and then we also talked about like the educational background, right? Certain perceptions that societal norms place on us. That was all that you had to go against, right?
Yes.
All of that.
Yes, and I would say, you know, being an Asian woman, a lot of the time people expected me personally to just accept it, to just take their no's, to lay down and give up. And they didn't know where I came from. They didn't know my mom, my dad. There were two incredibly strong people, and I'm sure you all have those strong people in your life. So, you know, no, it doesn't really affect me, and
Yeah, and I think that is part of us finding our identity and our sense of belonging,
Yeah.
right? Not by fitting into these societal placed norms on us and overcoming that. What would you say was the most emotionally challenging moment of your career? I mean, now that you've established this brand, and obviously you've faced so many roadblocks and rejections, if there was one that's most emotionally challenging, what would that be, and how did that make you feel?
one of the toughest time during, you know, the journey so far with House of M was that there was a moment that we were in talks with Nordstrom, and they already approved our brand, we're already moving forward, and we're just waiting for months for the PO to come in. And at that point, we were really struggling with cash flow because making a skincare product, you have to basically put all the capital like right there, making the batch. 5 to 6 months it takes to make it, and then, you know, so you're running low on cash basically. And at that time, we didn't hear anything from Nordstrom. When we heard back, actually, they said they were gonna put us on shelf, like meaning they're gonna wait for another date. They couldn't give me a launch date. And during that moment, instead of just, I cried a whole lot. But the next day I wake up, I immediately go out, source for a broker, because I know already I don't have the experience to deal with buyers, and I need to find somebody that do have the experience and the connection. And we fortunately found a very great broker. She's a very good friend with the chief merchant of Nordstrom, and that was how she picked up this entire thing and got us a PO within the next month from them.
That's amazing. You know, as you're speaking through that answer, it just reminds me that you are just relentless in how you go after what you want. this is just one example, right? Because you also shared with me in our chats prior to this, just the way that you researched the product, the way that you were resourceful, right? Sure, you have some seed money, but you had to make do with what you had, right? So talk to us about how that's played into your success. Just really taking action and leveraging what you have.
I would say ever since the beginning for us, I've been very scrappy, and it's completely okay. I started the journey and then I perfected things along the way. When we started, our packaging wasn't perfect. And then when we, be able to invest in our packaging now, it's become, more beautiful. So for me, it's the courage to just wake up and go after what you want. And I think it's easier when you chase your passion. If I was doing something that I'm not passionate about, I don't think I would have the grit to just wake up the next day and go do it. But I would say every day is a new day, and every day is another chance for me to just go at it and not quit. A lot of the times I wanted to quit, and I'm sure every single entrepreneur's go through the same thing, but the one that made it or the one that didn't quit, so.
I was actually going to lead into that question. Was there a point in this journey where you wanted to just call it quits? Because I can only imagine all the hurdles that you've had to face. Can you tell us if there's been that moment and how you were able to overcome that absolute just exhaustion and moment of?
In the beginning, I got a lot of pushback talking about postpartum depression. In the Vietnamese culture, we don't talk. It's a thing you don't talk about, and people tend to tell me to not talk about it, or people would not support when they see that I am the face behind the brand. Automatically, the brand quality start going lower somehow. And that was the moment I wanted to quit, because I said, I can't find my tribe. I don't know what's going on, but the community's not taking it. And I wanted to start within the Vietnamese community, because being a Vietnamese immigrant, I was scared that my English was not good enough. So I started where I was most comfortable, but that was, of course there's plenty of other people that helped me to get here where I am today in the Vietnamese community, but there was that one pivotal point that when, as soon as people found out that I was the person behind the brand, they stopped supporting. And that was the moment I wanted to quit.
Wow, that's really interesting story, because I don't think we actually uncovered that in our prior conversation. And it's interesting because we often do have to deal with this cultural aspect, right? We feel closest to our own culture, but there's certain roadblocks that's specific to our culture as well.
Yeah.
Interesting. And that's truly affected you deeply, because that's the moment that you recall potentially wanting to close that down.
Yeah.
So as we think about, you talk about your passion and the purpose, what is a practical piece of advice that you could share with the audience in terms of how they can harness that passion? Obviously you were able to harness your passion. You spoke to it a little bit earlier, but for those of us who have a hard time taking a step towards the passion and harnessing that, what's a practical piece of advice that you would give?
I would say just to start, jump right in with what you have, where you are exactly at this moment. If that's something you really wanted to do and you've been thinking about it for years, continue thinking about it. It's not going to make it come true. So I would say just to start, and and that's why I wanted to share my journey. It is to showcase that you don't have to have a college degree. I didn't get to finish college. You don't have to have come from a wealthy family or go out there and fundraise millions to start a beauty brand. You just need to have a passion, a point of difference, know your industry very well. Whatever that it is that you wanted to do, just start, and then you can improve it along the way without starting and waiting for everything to be perfect. You might spend too much. You might be overthinking. You might be the only thing that stops you from doing what you want to do. And you are your worst enemy sometimes. So yeah, that would be my advice.
No, I can relate that, but absolutely. When I see you, it actually reminds me of my own mom, who's just a go-getter. And all my life, I'm always like, well, I don't know. I think I need a well-planned approach before I can tackle it. And that truly holds me back. So it's truly inspirational to see someone so young who gets it, who just understands the meaning behind getting started and following your passion. I did want to share with I don't know that many people know what the M in your brand stand for. So House of M Beauty, is there a word that M stands for?
M is for miracles. It's a reflection of my journey. There were a lot of moments throughout my journey that I cannot explain why things happened that way, and I can only, give up to it is a miracle. And for me to survive being here on my own and be able to chase my dream now, and got to meet my childhood hero, you guys. I met Michelle Phan. She came to my Nordstrom launch party. She took a photo with me, and then she shared it on her Instagram. It was I almost died. So yeah, that M is for miracle. That is a miracle. To meet my childhood hero.
That is amazing. That is amazing. Well, as we close up, I do want to give a few minutes for the audience to ask any questions that they may have of you. Any final thoughts that you want to share that we may not have covered already?
I think we cover pretty much everything. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we really appreciate you sharing such deep stories. I know it's deeply personal to you, and that's what we had intended for this conversation to be, a very personal journey sharing, so that they can see that you are an inspiration, anyone can be an inspiration, and we can all just get started today with what we have. With that, is there anyone in the audience that